Next game, I want to look at Oklahoma at Alabama. This is a game that's Alabama is favored by 6 points. Over under is 45 and a half. This is a game that's probably going to, if Alabama wins, knock Oklahoma out of the SEC championship conversation and potentially out of the college football playoff conversation. With 3 losses, I don't know what the committee would be thinking there. And Alabama's still at 8-1. They have that Florida State loss that is still kind of hurting them in the AQR, but they're number 4 in the nation on the CFP rankings and the AP poll, coaches poll, all of that, and they have yet to lose in the SEC. So they're kind of in the driver's seat for that championship game. So let's kind of go ahead and talk about that. First off, what is in-season AI kind of telling us?
Yeah, in-season AI has Alabama at a 69% chance of winning this game. And when you kind of juxtapose that with Alabama by 6, basically what the AI is telling us here is bet Alabama to beat the spread. At a high level, we think that Alabama's not going to have much of an issue against Oklahoma. And, they are on their, X game win streak after their first loss of the season, or the first game loss of the season at FSU. But this is a totally different team than what we saw in the first 2 to 3 games this year. And then Oklahoma, I think, on the converse, has surprised a lot of people with how effective they've been. But again, faltering in games that they should have won. I think they should have beat Texas in that game, but they faced a pretty good defense that Texas had, and it really limited their ability to produce anything with Mateer leading that charge. But yeah, if we look at it kind of from the metric level, Alabama is a solid team, 20th in SP Plus offensive ranking, 10th in defensive ranking. On the converse, OU's 29th in offensive ranking and 3rd in defense SP Plus ranking. So I think it's not necessarily one of those offense versus defense matchups that we've been seeing a lot of this year. It's more of a 2 solid teams with both 2 solid defenses. So I think that's going to be interesting to see, how Ty Simpson and Mateer can operate in these 2 different schemas against these defenses, because these are both passing-led offenses. I think there's no question about that. What do you want to look at in particular here that would help refine this view?
Yeah. I mean, I know we kind of talked briefly last week about the Alabama and LSU game, kind of looked at, Ty Simpson and just his play over the past 9 games. So the whole season so far.
Yeah.
And, I was just looking at that LSU game in kind of a recap. He had a good game. The one thing that I think the headline grades showcase in watching that game, and it kind of your eye test, then after watching it, you're like, yeah, that checks out. He does not perform as well as he normally does when he's pressured.
Yep.
And that's true with a lot of quarterbacks. That's not necessarily a knock on Ty, but it definitely...
It's the first attribute. I mean, if you look at all the different, if we look at all of his headline grades, he's pretty much top 10, 15, 25 percentile in most of the metrics, with pressure pass being in the 37th percentile. That's his worst metric by far. He even does better when he's blitzed and not the pocket just collapsing around him. So I think that's kind of one of the things that I look at with Ty Simpson and saying, hey, what does OU need to do against Alabama in order to limit Ty Simpson's efficiencies? And if we go take a look at kind of what OU's specialty is on their defense, pass rush defense is B+, so it's a top 20 percentile pass rush defense in the country this year. So I think if they kind of lean on that, I think what that's going to allow is, a little bit of a deviation from what Ty Simpson does in terms of that medium to deep pass, kind of making him keep it a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, having to get yards in smaller chunks as opposed to those big deep balls that he typically gets, those 20-yard chunk plays. So that's kind of one of the main things I'm looking at here in terms of what OU can do against Alabama to limit Ty Simpson. But yeah, happy to take a look at anything else as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's kind of what I had highlighted and circled was just that LSU game. Obviously, Alabama won at 20-9.
Yeah.
It was one of those games that felt like it was more just because LSU could not do anything on offense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of was showcased a little bit. That headline grade of a D plus in pressure pass was showcased a little bit when I was watching that game, because when the front four of LSU was able to get in his face, Ty was not the same quarterback. So if I'm Brent Venables and I'm coaching up the defense for this week and coming up with a defensive game plan, that's what I'm looking to do is have some stunts, get them in pass situations, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and long, when you know Ty is going to have to drop back and pass, and then get in his face, because when he hasn't made a whole lot of mistakes this year, one interception, but when he is off target, it's because there's someone in his face.
Yeah.
And that, again, for all the Alabama fans, I don't want y'all to think I'm knocking him, because he's been phenomenal all year. He's led y'all to 8 straight wins, 9 straight wins. So he's been phenomenal all year. But that is kind of the one thing, and like you said, it's showcased in the headline grades. So I guess kind of final thoughts on Alabama, Oklahoma, anything like that.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'm looking at is the over under at 45.5 and Alabama by 6. And, our AI is predicting Alabama has a 69% chance of winning this game. I don't necessarily know what direction I would go in terms of the over under. I think Alabama is going to cover by 6. I think that I'm pretty confident about that bet, but the over under, Alabama hasn't put up a ton of points this year, and OU is pretty good at limiting the amount of points their opponent's able to get. So that's kind of the one question mark I have. So if anything, I would definitely bet Alabama by 6, or if you feel less sure about that type of bet, definitely bet Alabama money line.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I kind of wanted to let you talk just briefly about the 69% chance confidence that AI is giving Alabama in this game. You had earlier said that a 66, 67% chance, or 67% confidence that AI gives it normally is like a 10-point spread.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Normally anything kind of 67 to 71% falls in the spread range of about 10.5 to 12.5. So what this is saying is that we think this is a high value bet for Alabama by 6. So that's kind of how I would take away from reading that metric.
Got you. And the other thing I wanted to point out is it hasn't been showcased here, I guess, because all of the games are kind of, at least so far, they've all been 6, 7, 10-point spreads. Some a little closer at 3, but the AI doesn't just go with what Vegas is saying.
Yeah.
I mean, there is the UCF game last week was the perfect kind of one that immediately comes to mind, where Houston was favored. Or not UCF, not Houston. Was it the Houston UCF game?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically, kind of to summarize how this works is, without getting too technical, there's about 120 features I look at that encompass both offensive metrics and defensive metrics for both teams. And what I do is I run a machine learning model that is able to weight those different metrics against how they've done throughout the season against different opponents. And what I'm able to do now is produce any type of hypothetical matchup from this offense versus defense and vice versa. And so what this does is actually completely independent of the spread. A lot of times you might see it align pretty closely with
kind
spread.
of some correlation, right?
Exactly. But when we see this deviation like we're seeing here, is kind of what we consider a high value bet. Now, the AI is wrong. Our model's wrong sometimes, and that's just human nature of sports gambling, sports betting. But kind of the takeaway I have here is, look, we're right about 74, 75% of the time in terms of outcomes, which is one of the best, if not the best models around the league this year. So I'm pretty confident in our ability to predict the outcome of this game.
Yeah, and that 74, 75% is available. Kind of all of those confidence metrics are available to in-season insiders right now.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of other features coming. So please follow, like, subscribe, check out INSZN.co or INSZNCFB.com. Comment, let us know the other games you want to hear from, kind of preview anything else that you want to talk about or want us to talk about. And we will see you next time.